All right, let's just dive right in. We are about to take on one of the most fundamental ideas in all of physics, something that's taught in, well, every single textbook. But what if the way we've thought about it for more than 100 years has been completely wrong?
It all kicks off with a really simple question, something you use every single day. When you flick a light switch, how do those electrons really move through that little copper wire? I promise you, the answer is not what you think, and it has some absolutely massive implications for the future of energy.
So the story we're all told is this Sea of Free Electrons model. It's a nice, simple idea, right? You've got a grid of positive atoms, and their outer electrons just detach. They create this free-flowing sea that supposedly does two things. It holds the metal together like some kind of glue, and it carries the electrical current. It seems to make sense, doesn't it? Well, maybe not so much.
Now, this is what's really wild, the scale of this problem. According to the research we're digging into, this isn't just some tiny academic detail we're talking about. The implication is that for over a century, we've been building our entire technological world on a foundation that's, well, fundamentally cracked. Okay, so let's really put this old theory under the microscope. This sea of electrons idea, it's been the standard since the Drude model came out way back in 1900. Let's see how well it actually holds up to scrutiny.
So, the classic model paints this picture of electrons acting like tiny little pinballs. They're just zipping through the metal, randomly colliding with all the atoms in the lattice. And every single one of those collisions scatters the electron and wastes a tiny bit of energy. We feel that wasted energy as heat, and we call it electrical resistance. It's really a vision of pure chaos.
But here's the thing. Almost right away, you start to see some major cracks in this foundation. The moment you start poking at this sea of electrons idea, it really starts to fall apart. And here we go. This is the first big puzzle. The theory tells us these electrons have two jobs. Job 1, be the glue that holds the metal atoms together. Job 2, be the current that flows away when you apply a voltage. So, how can they possibly do both of those things at the same time?
This really gets to the heart of the contradiction, doesn't it? To be the glue, an electron has to be localized, right? It's got to stay in one place to hold the structure together. But to be a current, it has to be mobile. It has to move freely. You can't be in two places at once, and you definitely can't be both stationary and moving. I mean, think about it. If the glue just flows away, the whole thing should crumble. But of course, it doesn't.
Now for puzzle number 2, and this one is a real head-scratcher. If resistance is all about electrons colliding with atoms, what do you think should happen when you squeeze a metal? You're packing those atoms closer together. Logically, you'd expect more collisions, which means higher resistance, right?
But that's not what happens at all. The old theory predicts that more pressure means more resistance. But in reality, when you apply pressure, most metals become better conductors. Their resistance actually goes down. The whole pinball machine model is completely backwards. It predicts the exact opposite of what we see in the real world.
So, okay, the old model's broken. It just doesn't work. We need a new one. And this brings us to a completely different way of looking at things, something called the electron tunnel.
So just to recap, this is the old idea, a random, chaotic pinball game where every collision is what creates resistance. Just keep that chaotic image in your head for a second.
Okay, now look at this. The new theory suggests something completely different. It is not a pinball machine. It's more like an orderly, structured highway. Electrons don't randomly collide with atoms at all. Instead, they flow smoothly through these predefined channels that exist between them.
And these channels have a name, isopotential electron tunnels. The key idea here is that when molecules get packed really close together, these high-energy pathways actually form, and they allow electrons to just jump from one molecule to the next without losing any energy. It's like a train gliding along a perfectly smooth track.
So, if resistance isn't from collisions, then where does it come from? Well, think of it like an elevator. Most of the time, electrons are totally happy just hanging out on the ground floor, in their cozy home orbital. To get them moving, an external voltage has to provide the energy to lift them up to the highway in the sky, that's the tunnel. And the energy it costs to make that lift, that is resistance. Once they're in the tunnel, they flow for free until they drop back down, releasing that initial lift energy as heat.
Let me put it another way. Resistance isn't a traffic jam on the highway. It has nothing to do with collisions.
Resistance is simply the price of the ticket you have to pay to get onto the highway in the first place.
Now, what makes this new theory so incredibly powerful is that it doesn't just explain one little thing. It elegantly explains everything that the old model got wrong. It really is a unified theory.
Let's go back to our puzzles. So, why is metal stable? Because electrons aren't a free-floating glue. They are mostly bound to their home atoms. Why does pressure lower resistance? Well, because squeezing those atoms closer together actually lowers the elevator lift needed to get to the tunnels. The ticket gets cheaper. And this leads us to the holy grail, superconductivity. If you squeeze hard enough, the tunnels come all the way down to the ground floor. The ticket is now free. Electrons can just walk right onto the highway with absolutely zero resistance.
And that brings us to the grand finale. It turns out insulators, conductors, and superconductors, they aren't fundamentally different things. They're just different phases of the exact same system, and it's all determined by pressure and temperature. In an insulator, the tunnels are basically broken. In a conductor, there's a gap you have to cross to get to the tunnels. And in a superconductor, there is no gap. It's all one beautiful, continuous spectrum.
So why does busting this old physics myth matter so much? I mean, who really cares? Well, it matters because it gives us a clear roadmap to one of the most sought-after technologies in all of human history. This quote from the source paper is, well, it's staggering. Think about it. For more than a century, we may have been searching for superconductors in the dark, held back by a completely flawed model. Understanding the electron tunnel fundamentally changes how we search for and engineer materials with zero resistance. It changes the game.
And the prize for getting this right is just enormous. Room temperature superconductors would be world-changing. I mean, literally. They are the key to unlocking things like practical fusion energy, which requires these unbelievably powerful magnetic fields. With superconductors, we could create those fields with almost no energy loss, finally making clean, limitless energy a reality.
So, in the end, by throwing out a century-old myth and embracing this new, beautiful model of orderly electron highways, we might have finally found the map. And it leaves us with this one last fascinating question to chew on. Is the road to our energy future paved not with a chaotic sea of electrons, but with these elegant, invisible electron tunnels?